Charlie. I'm an alcoholic. How am I going to live up to an introduction like that? Well, as if you didn't hear enough last night, here we go again. I'm glad to be here. I enjoyed the panel this morning. That was excellent. I'm always swept away by listening to other people's experience and the depth of their experience and the breadth of it. And I was taken by everybody's participation was great. I mean, that's a weak word these days. Everybody uses it for great. This because I'm not a lot of things, but I like to think I am. Bob said I could talk about anything I want to this morning, which is going to be a long morning for you. Like I said last night, I'm an alcoholic. I have no outside issues at all. As one of the panelists brought up, we have a lot of outside issues in AA, but I don't have any of them really. My friend Don, a friend of my old timer named Don Gates, who's dead now, but Don was a great AA member, one of the 5%. And Don used to say that saying that you're an alcoholic and an addict is like saying that you're from Los Angeles and you're from California. Once we hear the first one, we're not really surprised at the second one, nor are we impressed. I'm alcoholic and I'm left-handed, which means I'm badass. That's one adjective that's never been applied to me. I can tell you that. But anyway, I love alcohol. I love the effect alcohol produces. I always have, ever since I tasted it when I was 18 years old. My first drunk was when I was 18 and got us 3/4 of a can of malt liquor in my system, and my entire perception of how things are changed. I don't know why or how, but it made me feel better. It changed in such a way that it made me want to have more alcohol because the way I felt when I was drinking was preferable to the way I was when I was sober. When I was sober, I didn't understand the difference until, most people drink with impunity. They have a bad week and they go out and have let's go out and get drunk. And so they have a couple of beers and then they get a ginger ale. Don't, if you're not going to follow through, don't say it, and most of the time I never got drunk to get drunk. I never purposely said, I'm having a crummy week and everything's closing in on me and people are oppressing me. I'm going to go out and get good and drunk. I never said that because I never got drunk when I drank. Other people mistook it for drunk. But where I go when I drink is I go there. And I think every alcoholic I know understands what I'm talking about, even though we go around this room and have 200 different variations on what there is to you. You and I both know that when you and I drink, we're going there. We're going to get to that place where everything is going to be better in about 20 minutes. And I'm going to be a participant in it. And I am going to make it happen. And I'm going to finally get all my ducks in a row. And things are going to be better tomorrow. And these people don't intimidate me like they usually do. Because I'm there. I'm in that space. I'm safe. I'm finally seeing the world as it really is, rather than that brittle, angry way that I saw it when I'm sober. Because when I'm sober, I'm an angry, brittle guy. They say in here that we're like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde when we drink. I'm like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Rogers when I drink. I'm a really brittle dick when I'm sober. My wife, I have a wonderful wife. I just talked to her on the phone. She told me to tell you she's wonderful. We fight. We're a couple. It's the first time I've been in a relationship where we can fight and still love each other at the end of it. We still kind of just grumble and then we make up and then everything's fine. But she tells me, she always says this. Whenever I know I'm being a certain way, even though I don't see it at first, she'll come up and go, I love you so much, except when you're being an asshole. But she never accuses me. She just tells me what the difference is when she notices it. And And one time I said to her, we got into an argument. And I said, you can be a really vicious bitch sometime. And she looked at me and she walked off and slammed the door, went into the other part of the house and shut the door. I thought, oh no, I've crossed the line in here. And how am I going to get? I'll let her settle down for a second. 10 minutes later, she comes walking out and she said, I don't like it when you call me vicious. And and so I thought, write that note down. And anything I can do to help, bitch. And if any of you know my wife, she could knock my block off. So we have a lot of laughs. If you're in a relationship with somebody, you got to laugh too. I mean, you really need to pull up that sense of humor and laugh at yourself, not at each other, but laugh at yourself. Laugh with yourself. Take a bubble bath. Not that's that. Everybody knows. I mean, I feel like I'm talking to people that I. It's like I told this story last night, uh, but I drank. I love the effect of alcohol. It changed my life. It changed the way things became real to me. And I thought I was seeing life as it was supposed to be seen, and I was sadly mistaken. And as I started to have consequences related to my drinking, things started to get more and more dicey until finally, on the 11th of June of 1981, I was as drunk as I've ever been in my life, and I couldn't get there. I could get there in my peripheral vision, just a sidelong glance of I could not get good and goddamn there, just right in it in the pocket again where I could before, and it just brought nothing but it was like having a cascading despair where I've realized there was not. I don't know about you, but when I drank, I can always drum up some fake view of how things are going to be tomorrow. I can say, well, tomorrow once I get through this, and now that I see what's really, now that my perception is acutely clear, tomorrow I'm going to line this baby up and I'm going for it. I'm going to do it for real. And then the next day it'd be the same thing. I wake up, I'm sick, I'm irritable, I'm lost, I'm befuddled. Why did I do this again? My hangover is awful. I'm just dying. And then you get to that point where your hangover is more and more intense, and it gets more intense and more intense, and you just feel like you're going to cry and your eyes are going to start bleeding. And then all of a sudden it goes tick, and it's one less degree of intensity. It starts to back away from being worse, and it becomes less. And all my resolutions fall away at that point. I was too hard on myself. Why did I say that? I can drink again. I don't need to worry about that. And then I would ruin that day. But on the 11th of June of 1981, which is my only sobriety date, I came to a point where I could not imagine tomorrow. And it wasn't dramatic. There was nothing dramatic about it. There was nothing moving about it. It was just a moment where I felt like I wish I could just be gone. I wish I could just die. And I know that sounds dramatic because I mean, not many. You don't bring this up in a PTA meeting, but only in AA. But I thought I just want to die. I don't want to live like this anymore. I can't live like this anymore. I can't live in this confusion and befuddlement and the sense that I just need a few drinks to feel good, but then it destroys me. I don't know why, but I can't not drink. I just drink, and the cycle, it's like being on a hamster wheel over and over with the same set of promises and the same failure to fulfill anything. And I want to be lifted out of this world. Please, if I can just be lifted out of here, I'd be happy. Need anything great, just please take me away. And I had a moment of clarity at that point where I felt absolutely loved from the top of my head to the bottom of my feet for about 30 seconds. I felt thoroughly full of love and joy, and I didn't know where that came from. And and all of a sudden it just went away. And I thought of this going insane. I was at a meditation retreat. You would think if you're at a meditation retreat with a bunch of other people who are there to find some kind of spiritual center, and you'd had your facilitator who is also your therapist who's been seeing you for 2 years, you'd think you would take an opportunity to have an experience like that. You would run back and tell them what happened because you're in the midst of people that are looking for that very kind of change. And I went back to my room and sat there by myself and just shuddered at the thought of where I was right then. I don't know what's wrong with me. I can't die. I can't kill myself. I feel loved all of a sudden. How crazy. What is wrong? I'm insane. I got to get out of here. Heaven forbid I go talk to the therapist. I'll talk to her when I feel better about myself because I don't want her to not like me. And that's the problem. I have a double problem of demanding everybody like me and yet hating the human race at the same time. I like to think of it as the emotional slinky that goes back and forth. I hate you. Get your filthy mutton chops off of me. Where are you going? Wait a minute. What happened? And it's just never constant. I love you. I want to be with you forever, but please, not this morning. That's how I am. That's just how I always am. I'm writing these great checks on this hand, and on the other hand, I'm calling the bank saying, stop payment. Don't do that all the time. And it just exhausted me. But when I drank, I felt like all my accounts were good and all my accounts were funded and everything I said was real and every emotion I had was sincere. Every feeling, every word I said was sincere when I was drunk. And that's why I had so many friends at the bars. We've run into all kinds of kindred spirits sitting at the Humdinger. We don't even talk to each other. We communicate in the way that alcoholics who are still drinking communicate. It's the nod of the head. It's the deep breath after you finally get to the there off ramp. There's a crack of the neck. It's that sense of satisfaction and camaraderie that we're all heading in the same direction, right? All of us writers and we astronauts and surgeons and guys who just missed the NFL draft by one haul. And we're all there in the bar and we're all getting ready to put our feet in the starting block and wait for the gun to go off, tomorrow. It's not today. Today is preparation. Today is focus. Don't interrupt my focus, especially when I'm really drunk, because focus is the only thing that's holding that big ball of vomit in my throat from exploding all over you. Because I don't like to throw up, but I can balance nausea to where it's just bobbing up and down in my stomach while I'm having a conversation face to face with somebody going, "Don't interrupt me." Do not interrupt me, because if I lose focus, you're gonna go to the dry cleaner. But anyway, that's just how I drive. And I don't have a big, violent story. I've never come out of a blackout yelling, "You pigs you're not gonna take me alive." I know a woman who did that, and that's not my story, but I love her story. I love hearing people saying, "I came out of a blackout in a snowstorm yelling, 'Man, the summit's just ahead.'" And I thought, that's amazing. That's brilliant. Never come out of a blackout yelling, "Cover me, I'm going in." I wish, but I've never come out of a blackout truthfully saying much of anything. I've come out of blackouts of people saying stuff to me like, "Boy, I bet that hurt." Because when I drink, I just get hurt. I don't know why. Who knows why? It's just like my thought's always been that the fastest way down a flight of stairs is just relax. And I've done that over and over again. It just happens, and my drunkalog is full of those little mini Waterloos, the mini failures that compound into a sense of despair. And I think most of us are like that. Very few of us drink over catastrophe. Most of us drink over little slights. And the little slights that we amplify in our own mind is to be big, big hurts that we turn into resentments. And then we drink again. I don't drink. If I got my arm cut off tomorrow, I don't know that I would drink. But somebody looks at me passing in a bus, the bus starts to pull away and someone looks out the window at me and they give me a funny look. And I get my dander up and go, "What? What are you looking at?" But meanwhile, the bus is gone and I'm walking around going, "Screw them." And everything is personal. When you're alcoholic, everything becomes personalized. every slight is hugely overrated, except in the person who slights us doesn't even know they did it. And I lived my life like that. I got married. I had a lovely wife who I just treated like crap because she didn't get it. Most people didn't get it. My father, one time when I was in my 20s, he died when I was 23, but I think when I was 21, he said, "Why don't you come home and have some beer? We'll sit down and we'll have a beer." That was my dad's idea of trying to connect, because he wasn't alcoholic. He was a drill instructor in the Marine Corps. He knew how to drink, but he wasn't alcoholic, and he loved have a few beers. But he said, "Why don't you come back?" Because he knew I was drinking at bars. And he knew I was getting drunk and he just knew I was running my life into the ground. And yet he wanted to try to connect, and he just didn't get it. Why would I want to go home and drink with you? No offense. I distanced myself from my father and my mother really quickly, and began to hang with the people that I thought understood my passion, my artistic pain. It's a pain so intense that I can barely do anything artistic. But I mean to, and I'm going to soon. But right now, I got a drink, and I go to there was a place in Santa Monica called the Ore House, and I go down there and drink. And this is the early '70s, and and one night somebody firebombed the Ore House after it had closed. They just chucked a Molotov cocktail through the window and set the thing on fire. And I was in mourning for 6 months after that because we couldn't go in there and drink. They burned the place down, and they had to rebuild it. And it was almost like a big barn raising with the Amish. It was like all the alcoholics were just sending in money to try to get them to reopen the Ore House. And I grieved over that because it was a neighborhood bar. I could walk down the street, go there and get drunk and walk home. That was my only consideration, was transportation. I don't want to drive drunk because I've been pulled over too many times drunk. Never been arrested. In the '70s, you didn't usually get arrested. Some people did, but usually they just pull you over and toss your keys in the trunk and shut it and say, "Come back, get your car tomorrow," and then drive off and leave you there to walk home. But, and I never got arrested. I never got detained. I've been pulled over and questioned, but never held. But um, my life was just a little torn shreds on the edges and in the center, and I didn't even realize it. And on the 11th of June, I went home from that meditation retreat, and I just sat there and lied because I was 30 years old and my life was nowhere. I've been churched, I've been churched and schooled and socialized, as Bob B. Talks about. I had all the benefits that a society can give to an individual. I had all the privilege. My parents didn't have any money. My father was a carpenter, and he, when he got out of the Marine Corps, he had a 5th grade education. He was a carpenter, and that was his job. And my mom was a housewife, and she wanted to be a journalist, and she never went to school to do that because her mother yanked her out of school and made her go to work when she was about 15. And so she never had an education. And there I was given an education. Had a community that I grew up in that cared, the parents would discipline each other's kids. In those days, if you did something wrong in front of Pat's mom, she would haul your butt in and give you a chewing out. And then you'd go home and complain to your mother, or she would call my mother, and my mother would give me a second chewing out. It wasn't like she'd run to my defense. I need an advocate. If I have, but I didn't have any advocates, and I just had parents that were concerned. And I grew up under all of this benefit, and yet I'm an alcoholic. And there are people that grew up in the exact same neighborhood I did that aren't. Probably 95% of them. And why is that? I don't know. I think I just have alcoholism because when I drink, I change. I changed way differently than most of my friends did when they would drink. My life and perception changes to become something big and broad and hopeful and draw me in until finally it just kicked my butt. Until I was peeing blood, I was having a lot of problems and owed everybody in the world. And I didn't drink for 4 days after I got back from that vacation at the retreat. And then I got a call from my sister-in-law, or from my mother-in-law, actually, because my sister-in-law was in a detox. And Debbie had been in there for 21 days, and she needed a ride to an AA meeting. And so my mother-in-law called and said, "Can you give Debbie a ride to an AA meeting?" And I said, "Okay." And she said, "Are you okay to drive?" And 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 it was a weird question. I said, "Yeah, I think so. I am. I haven't had a drink for 4 days." And she said, "Good for you," because her son had died of alcoholism. he was my age, uh, and I've I've been hanging out with him the week or two before, and then 2 weeks later he was dead at 25. He drowned, and nobody attributed it to alcoholism. It was just bad. It was a drowning accident. This guy had it just like I did, and so his widow's in this care unit, and she needs a ride to an AA meeting. And I thought, well, I can give her a break and maybe get something going because I'd been separated from my wife for about 3 days, and you know how we are. That's one. A lot of us have gambling problems. A lot of us have other problems. We have discipline. We have pride problems. Also, I'm a lust guy, and my mind and me. That's my fallback position is lust. I can't help it. I've been on hormone alert since I was 9. I can't help it, and I can now because you can take one look at me and know I need no further birth control devices. Just one sincere look will turn off most women, but. So I went to pick up Debbie, and I got her, and she was 22 days sober, and she 12-stepped me in the ride to this meeting, and she didn't 12-step me in the way that you think, because a lot of people think that 12-stepping is sitting down with the suffering alcoholic and handing them the program of Alcoholics Anonymous as Bill would intend for them to do, or sit for a moment to channel Dr. Bob before you go into your spiel. Debbie just told me, I said, how you doing? And she said, honestly, I'm doing really well. I've been sober for 21 days, 22 days now. And they brought AA meetings into this place, and I've been busy, and I've been reading the book and trying to get enough of what I need so that when I leave there, I have something that I can hang on to when I get out. And that's why I want to go to an AA meeting tonight. And that's why I asked Sue if she'd call you, because I need a ride. And I want to keep this going. I want to keep the roll going. And so she looked different. Her eyes looked different. Her face looked different. Her whole demeanor was different. And we got to this meeting, and we pulled up, and she asked me to come into the meeting. And I didn't want to go in the meeting. Why do I want to go in? I'm not an alcoholic. And she said, well, you don't have to be an alcoholic. It's an open meeting. And so guests are welcome. And since Sue said you quit drinking this week, maybe you'll hear something that'll help you. Okay. So I went and parked the car. No reverse on my car. I had to find a place to park it where I could pull out ahead, straight ahead. I'm driving this beat up. We are what our cars are too when we get sober. I had a 67 Bug that somebody tried to slap the smile off its face. It had a crooked bumper in it on, and one headlight's kind of cockeyed, and it's aimed up at the trees looking for raccoons or something. I don't know. And then and it had about a 1/4 inch of paint, and the rest was primer and crap and rust, and it was a wreck. And it had no reverse. So I always had to park it on a hill somewhere in case the battery died. I could just drop it into neutral and try to pop that clutch, but it's hard. I lived in Santa Monica, which is a lot of hills in this down by the ocean, and I had to find a place at 2 a.m. where I could park face down with nobody in front of me, just in case. It seemed to me infinitely more acceptable to do that than to go get the transmission fixed. Right? Do we not patchwork our entire lives? It also the key, when you put it in, you put the key in, but you couldn't turn it unless you pulled it out about 1 millimeter, and then it would turn, which seemed easier to me to just acknowledge that than to go get the key fixed. My life, I take that and lay that down as the template for my entire life. I'm pissing blood, but it's so much easier to just stuff a little tissue in there for the day and continue dripping blood than to go to the doctor and be embarrassed. When I finally got sober and I finally got a sponsor, I copped to it, and he said, call the doctor and see if you can make an appointment. So I called. I thought, this is really overreacting. I called the doctor, said, I'd like to make an appointment to see the doctor. Okay, well, we can get you in about a week and a half. I said, okay, good. She said, what's the problem? I told her, and she said, you need to come in this afternoon. And she got, I went in there, I had an infection. I was sick. I just physically sick as a result of whatever it was I was doing. And got that taken care of. But it seemed to me more acceptable to just tough it out, because it's too embarrassing to acknowledge these things. It's too embarrassing to acknowledge that your marriage is failing. So just pretend that it's working. Let's just pretend we're all happy. Because I find that immeasurably more humane than actually breaking up with you. A one-night stand is really, that's so painful to tell someone this is just a one-night stand. So why don't we just carry this relationship on for the next 3 years? I think that's more humane, until finally, as a guy sponsor says, finally you and your wife are on the floor rolling around choking each other. And I find that much better than to actually confront the pain after a day and say, I made a mistake. But that's another night. That's another sex and fear talk, right, Bob? Uh, so, uh, anyway, I went to this AA meeting. I talked about that last night. I really was not enamored with it. It seemed like a hyper-caffeinated dog park to me. A lot of people, shaking hands, and everybody was happy. But I knew they were whistling in the dark. This is all happy camp. Everybody's happy here. I'm not happy. I am here, and you're telling me I should be happy just like you. I think that you are deluded. If you had anything on the beam, you would know that life is much more complicated. It has more nuance and shading and layers and all that stuff like I have. My problems are real. What do I do? Keep coming back. First things first, live and let. It's like, maybe you're not hearing me. Finally, at 45 days, I finally got a sponsor. I toughed it out long enough. I got a sponsor not because I wanted to be sincere. I got a sponsor so you would shut up. Stop asking me if I have a sponsor. So I got a sponsor so I could say, yes, he's right there. Check it out. My sponsor was like a museum piece to me. If you look to your left, you'll see my sponsor. It's like having an Amana range in a showroom, Amana, makers of fine stoves for. There he is. He's a big, tall, imposing guy. Really, that's going to be my sponsor. I haven't asked him yet, but that's going to be him. And I asked him because he was really nice to me and he was kind. He knew my name. He remembered my name. Is there anything more important in AA for a newcomer than to have somebody remember their name and call them by name when they see them? To me, it was amazing that someone knew my name. I'll tell you, my encounter in sobriety was with, Keith Carpenter, who was a former secretary of my group. Keith is dead now. He spoke at the Sunday night meeting that I was going to with Debbie. And Debbie got drunk at 31 days, the woman who brought me to AA. And it took her 9 years to get back to AA. It's not easy to get back to AA. And I don't know that I could ever reconstruct the sequence of the events that it took and the coincidences and the things that happened to get sober again. I don't know if I could. And so I'm not going to put as Craig said, I'm not going to put my life on the line. I'm not going to bet my life that I could. Because you hear people say, drinking was just part of my recovery. Drinking is not part of recovery. Drinking is the opposite of recovery. Just to make that really clear, drinking is not like a hurdle you jump over during recovery to get to the next thing. Drinking is death to most of us at a certain period, over a certain period. It could be death in one night. There was some mook that got drunk in Simi Valley a couple of days ago and drove the wrong way on the freeway and he killed himself, but he killed two people, innocent people driving on the freeway, a man and his wife. And he was I've been that drunk, and I tried to get on the freeway one time drunk, so I don't judge him. But, it only takes one night for me to get in that kind of trouble. Do I want to bet my life so that I can get there one more time? Because the back of my mind, there's a little bitty nub that has the memory of there hanging in it. And I do not want to light the pilot light to get that fired up so I can start thinking about it. Because once I start thinking about it, it becomes an itch that I can't scratch. And that's why I stay active in Alcoholics Anonymous, because it's not like it's a distraction. It's that I can re-channel my concern for my own interest into the interest in somebody else or something else, or try to be an agent of something. I might even be just an agent of a bad example sometimes, but that's something else. That's not my call. So I was going to this Sunday night meeting, and Debbie had left, so now I was abandoned in AA. And I was going to one whopping meeting a week, because that's when you meet, on Sunday nights, right? And this guy named Keith Carpenter spoke there. The week before it had been Chuck Chamberlain. Everybody was all stirred up because it was Chuck C. speaking. It's like what is some regional celebrity, Chuck C? Does he have a last name? And it never occurred to me, Alcoholics Anonymous. But who is this guy? And everybody, Chuck walked in the room, and he just lit the room up. Where this guy went, he would walk into a room, and you didn't even know who he was, and you go, that guy's got something going on, because everybody surrounded him, and he was charismatic, and he was friendly and lovely. He made eye contact with you, and he spoke to you. And he spoke at the meeting. I didn't understand a word he said. Nothing. And then they said, go up and thank him. And I thought, for what? I didn't get it. But I was taught by activists that no one gives a crap what you feel about anything. We could take a straw vote right now, and I bet you nobody gives a rat's ass how you feel about anything. Really, nothing. Not that we don't love you. We just don't care about your feelings until after you try something. Then we want to hear how you feel. Now tell me how you feel after you tried it, because you didn't want to. Because again, people said at the panel, it's very clear. Direction sometimes is really obnoxious. And I treat most direction like I treated when my parents used to want to take me to the nursery. My parents didn't have a lot of money, so Sundays when they wanted to entertain themselves, they would drive to a nursery and look at flowers and plants and think about what they would want to put in their backyard if they could afford it. And they always dragged me along. And I'm an only child. And every time they would say, let's get in the car and go to the nursery, I was like one of those kids. And if you have kids, you understand, come on, let's go. And they go dead weight while you're holding them. And they start to whine, and then they just twist. It's uncanny, because you're holding their wrist, and they can do 360 degrees while you're holding it straight out and cry. And it's just dead weight. And that's how I've been about everything I've ever had to do in AA. Everything. I got my big book and was at that, and Keith spoke the next week, and there's a line of people that I'd learned the week before, you go up and thank the speaker. They said, thank the speaker. It doesn't matter if you understood him or not. Just go up and thank him, because he gave up his evening to come talk to us, and he doesn't get paid for it. And so just go up and thank him. That's all you got to do. And so I got in line, because now they were looking at me to make sure I was going to thank the speaker. And I got in line, and I got up to Keith, and I was again I was always the last person in line. And Keith goes, where you go to meetings? And I told him, here. And he said, how many meetings you go to? And I said, I go to about 4. He goes, don't you think you should be going to about 7? And I said, well, I think 4 a month would be. And he looked at me and said, I was talking about per week. You should be going to 7 meetings a week. And I said, what? And he said, how many nights a week did you drink? 7. And he goes, then why can't you go to meetings 7 nights and just protect yourself? And I said, because I don't live near my meetings. I live in Orange County, and I work in Santa Monica. I can't get to meetings. By the time I get back to Orange County, it's too late to go to a meeting. He said, why don't you go to a meeting close to your house, or to your work? And my first thought, I'm not a stupid guy. My first thought was, you can do that? You can actually go to a meeting I thought it was like the Catholic parish, where you had to go to the one in your community, And I thought, really? And he said, yeah, here's an address. I want you to come to this one. I'll be there Wednesday night. I'll see you there. And I went there, and it was a Pacific group, and it was a huge meeting. There was 300 people at the time. And there was Keith, and he came up and greeted me, and people were kind. And I sat next to this little woman named Alice. And Alice was a little black lady she was having flashbacks from Vietnam, but she'd never been to Vietnam. And I'm sitting next to Alice in the back row of the meeting, and she's looking at me. This is before the meeting starts. She's looking at me like this, and she said, I'm Alice. And I said, hi, I'm Charlie. And she goes, how long are you sober? And I said, 40 days. And she was pissed because she had like 30 days. And she goes, you got a sponsor? And I said, nope. And she said, well, you better get you one. I said, I'll be sure to get me one real soon. And she said, where are you going to meetings? And I said, well, it's my first time here. And she goes, you got something to write on? And I gave her a deposit slip for my checkbook because fat chance I was going to be using that anytime soon. And she wrote in the tiniest handwriting I've ever seen with a rapidograph pen, one of those needlepoint pens, the directions. She'd asked me where I worked. She was grilling me for information. She wrote the directions to every single Pacific Group meeting from the driveway of my job. She knew I worked at Santa Monica College. She was, you pull out the driveway, you turn left on Tuesday nights, and you go down to Marine Avenue. There's a book study, and I'll see you down there. And then on Wednesday night, you turn to the left and you head up 20. And she wrote it all down and handed it to me. And I thought, wow. And so the next night, a guy in the group named Butch kind of cornered me, and he took me out to coffee for coffee afterward. And he said, tomorrow night we meet at this. I said, I know where you meet tomorrow night. And he said, I'll see you there. So I go to this meeting at a savings and loan. I'm standing there, and here comes Alice through the crowd. I was her pet project. And she came up and she said, you get a sponsor yet? And I said, not yet. And she said, well, you better get you one. I said, yeah, I will. And then she starts grilling me again about everything. And okay. And then Friday was the men's stag. So I felt safe that Alice wouldn't be there. And then Saturday night, the same thing. She kept it. And Sunday night, the same thing. Alice, she'd be across the room. And I kind of walk in the room and kind of look for Alice, and then I try to ease over to get around some men, and here comes Alice right through the crowd, wild-eyed, Charlie, Alice, you got a sponsor yet? And it's like, and so the following Monday, I'm driving from Anaheim to Santa Monica. It was about 40 miles, my usual trip to work. And I'm on the freeway, and all of a sudden, we're just moving along on the 405. All of a sudden, traffic stopped. I slammed my brakes on that old Volkswagen, and I pulled right up to the bumper of the car in front of me like this, stopped. I thought, God, maybe this thing works. In this program, I'm sober. I didn't get in a rear ender. And I look in my rearview mirror, and the guy in the pickup truck coming up behind me is talking to somebody next to him like this. And he slammed his brakes on. He just accordioned me between the two cars. Right. And I get out. Now I'm shell-shocked because now I'm like 40 days sober. I have no program. I have no sponsor. I have nothing. And now AA went from, hey, this thing works, to screw this. I'm going to drink. This is ridiculous. I'm standing out there, and the two people who hit me, neither of them spoke English. And they're talking to each other, and I'm standing there alone. I don't know what to do. And the traffic now has slowed down so they can all look at the idiots who have jammed up the traffic during rush hour. And I'm standing there as a sea of traffic goes by. These two guys are talking to each other behind me that had accordioned me. And then I look out, just staring out into the traffic, and a car drives by, and it's Alice waving. It was, of all the people in Los Angeles at that moment, it's freaking Alice driving by. Grin a mile wide, waving. And you know what? I surrendered at that point. I just said, I'm going to get me one. If I pass up this opportunity, I'll probably die. And I got a sponsor named Bill. And Bill, he gave me some direction, which is, it's no big deal. He didn't give me, his direction was kind of harsh, I thought, because he was really nice till I asked him to sponsor me. Then he kind of turned on me, and he had 7 years of sobriety. And he said, I got some things. So are you willing to do anything to stay sober? And I said, I am. And he said, that's good. That's good. Because here's what I want you to do. I want you to get to your meetings early. I want you to get there like an hour early so you can participate in some fellowship with people and get to know people. I'd like you to walk around the room during the meeting, before the meeting, and start shaking hands with people and ask people their name. Ask them their name and tell them your name. And for the men, when you get to the men, get their phone numbers. Just the men. And then call these guys. Just pick a phone number out and call somebody. I said, what am I going to tell them? You just call them and say, this is Charlie. I got your number at the meeting last night. I was thinking about you, and I hope you're having a good day. That's all you got to say. And they'll take it from there. And if you get their answering machine, because people were just starting to get answering machines then, if you get an answering machine, just leave that message that you're thinking of them. And I said, okay. And he said, now I want you to go to coffee with people after the meeting. So you get to know people outside. Okay, that's fine. And I want you to... I'm thinking, when's this going to stop? And his list is endless. He goes, I want you to get a commitment at all your meetings and treat it like a job so that you're there as if you were being paid to be there, because you are being paid to be there, but you just don't know it yet. So I want you to be at your commitment and treat it like a job and report to your commitment person and let them know you're there. Okay. And now I'm starting to, you know, bad idea asking this guy. And he said, I want you to call me in the mornings. Every morning, call me, and I want you to pray to a power that's bigger than you are. So, okay, I can do that. He goes, and before Friday, I'd like to shave that stupid mustache off and get a haircut because you'll feel better. I said, now, at the time, my only connection to John Lennon was that mustache. I had a nice little mustache, and I also had I had some hair, a lot of hair, and he said, shave your mustache off and you could trim your hair. And I thought, what are you? He said, I know because I didn't recall seeing a chapter to the barber in that hook. And he said, I just asked you about a minute ago if you were willing to do anything to stay sober. And you said yes. I just asked you to shave your mustache off. If you're not willing to shave your mustache off just because I asked you to do it, what makes me think that you're going to do the steps when I ask you to do them? Because they're a lot harder than shaving. I just want to find out really quick if you're a loser or not. And I guess I'll find out Friday. See you at the Stag. He got up and walked out of the coffee shop. And I couldn't believe, I'm thinking, and now I'm up, I'm 30 years old. I'm smart. I've got a degree somewhere at home. And I'm what did I just sign on for? And I didn't shave the next day because it was 2 days away that I was supposed to see him. I'm gonna sweat this bastard. And so I didn't shave. But that Friday morning, I got up and I walked in the bathroom and I'm looking at myself in the mirror, as was my custom. And I'm looking at myself and I thought, something occurred to me. It wasn't like a conscious thought. It just was something that came welling up in the same way that I felt loved at that meditation retreat. And it said, if you fight one more thing here, you're not going to make it. And I took that razor and shaved that mustache off. I got my hair trimmed a little bit later, but the mustache was the big thing. I shaved it off. And I felt awful. I felt like so self-conscious, And I went to the men's stag that night, and Bill came firing through the crowd, and he threw his arm around my shoulder. And he said, here we go. This is it, sport. We're going. And I started doing what he told me to do. I didn't like it. I didn't like the commitments. I don't like folding chords for some anal retentive sound guy. I don't like mopping floors, at meetings. I know I'm Irish and we're built for that kind of labor, but come on. I mean, we've evolved over the years, but there I am mopping away, and I had cleanup at every single meeting. It seemed like I was the literature mule in another meeting. I had to carry the box of books in for the guy because he had a bad back. And I'd bring him in, and then he would dismiss me and say, I'll see you after the Lord's Prayer. I thought, you insufferable puke. I work in a bookstore. I know how to market those books and position them, but I said, okay. And I walk off, and I started doing what he told me to do. I got phone numbers. I called people. I had one guy, and I'll tell you how sincere, how sort of sincere. It's kind of stupid right now, but I was desperate. And desperation, you can only gauge your own desperation by how willing you are to do things that you don't believe in, that people ask you to do. And one guy I met at the men's stag named Richard Barton said, I want you to call me tomorrow at 1:00. And he gave me his phone number. And I got that phone number, and I was like, okay. And I'd only had a sponsor for about a week. And I went home, and I was, again, living in Anaheim. And at 12:15, I took a shower. I brushed my teeth and shaved. I was ready. And now it's like 10 minutes to 1. Get some more coffee. And now it's like 20. I waited and I counted off the seconds till 1:00. And in about 15 seconds before 1, I started dialing his phone. Only to call him at 1. I took him literally like 1:00 is it. And I get on the phone with him. It's like going on a date, which I usually was sitting by the door all dressed at noon. But And he picks up the phone. Hello? I said, Richard? Yeah, this is Charlie. Oh, hi, Charlie. I said, you gave me your phone number last night. Yeah, how you doing, man? I'm okay. You gonna be at the meeting tonight? I said, yeah, I'll be there. And he goes, good, I'll look for you there. Have a good day. Click. That's what I prepped for, was a 15-second exchange. I was kind of hoping for a little more, a little more of this. Give me a little more stuff here. Come on, show me what this means. And went to the meeting and saw him there. And I started doing all this stuff, and it was dreary and it was tedious. And if you know anything about AA, it's 90% tedious. Nothing's more tedious than going to pick somebody up or answering phones on the midnight to 8 shift downtown and the central office and getting some whack job who wants to argue AA at 4 o'clock in the morning while you're, and then insists that you're an idiot and you're going, hey, but you called me at 4 o'clock in the morning. So who's the idiot? And I guess because I picked it up, but that kind of, a lot of it's just tedious. Mopping floors. What's that got to do with anything? I want to be spiritual. I want to find the secret to sobriety. Oh, okay. Then go in and ask the guy who's cleaning the coffee pots if you can dump those baskets full of grounds for him. Maybe there's a communication problem here. See, I'm going through something that's happening on planet Earth. I'm not dealing with something that can be repaired by emptying coffee grounds. See. Well, I just told you to go empty the coffee grounds. Go empty the coffee grounds. All right, but we're going to take this up later. I didn't say. And I go in and empty the coffee grounds. And I come back and I forgot what I was upset about, and that really ticks me off. One time I was going to get drunk one night. Because I had a girlfriend at about 3 or 4 months. Big mistake. Because I found in AA that you attract what you are. Some people say, the more I get sober, the more I feel I attract who I deserve. In a way, yeah. And I fell in love. I just fell head over heels with this girl. She was wonderful. And she's still sober. She's sober 35 years, lives in New York, happily married, family. And we still are in contact and still chat. But she decided to move back to New York. Well, we're in the middle of this torrid affair, an affair for which I ditched my comrades in AA. I ditched my peer group to go meet with her, those little furtive get-togethers, and I won't go out for coffee night. I'm feeling a little congested. I think I should probably go home and sleep. And then she moved, and I was going to drink because I thought that's the only way I can deal with it. My heart was broken. And I thought, if you can't avoid pain like this, I need a drink. And I'm just out of my mind. I wound up walking through Westwood. It was miles from where I lived. I was walking through Westwood. I don't know where my car was. I was out of my mind. And I called my sponsor I told him what happened. I'm crying on the phone, and I thought he'd be sympathetic at least. And he goes, just get your ass to the meeting tonight. What's the matter with you? Click. But wait, I'm in pain. And I went to the meeting that night, and I was gonna drink that night, except that night I told this guy Luis in my group, a guy I got sober with, he's still sober. I said I would stack the chairs for him because he was going away, and I wound up going there because I had to stack the chairs, not because Bill told me to go there, but because I told Luis I would do that for him, and that commitment saved my life. Truly, I'm not overstating it. If I'd been left to my own devices that night, I don't know where I would have turned up, because I was out of my mind. And my life has gotten progressively better the more I've surrendered to what's going on in AA. I had a good friend named Chuck Nisbet in AA in the group. And what time? I'm feeling warm. Okay, thank you. So Chuck Nisbet was an old timer in my group, and he was a great guy, just a sweet man. Never had an unkind thing to say about anybody. He was not judgmental, just a kind, fatherly guy. And he died, and I had a dream about 3 months later, and Chuck visited me in the dream. And I said, Chuck, how's it going? And he said, this isn't a dream. He said, it always goes better when I try not to improve on life's on life's terms. I thought, that's good news, and I've carried that around. If I don't try to improve on life's terms and stop questioning life's terms, things invariably are okay. Not great, but they resolve. They get resolved. The seemingly unresolvable stuff somehow works out. And I complained to my sponsor because I hated the job I was in. I worked in a bookstore. I wanted to be a writer. The osmosis thing wasn't working. I unloaded so many books off trucks and I never wrote anything. I'd gone up to a guy in my group named Maurice Z. Zolotau. Maurice is dead now. Any anonymity I break, people have died, and I know Maurice would be happy to hear his name being invoked in a meeting in a positive way. But Maurice was one of these big, gruff New York guys, and tall, talk like this. My wife and I used to have dinner at the Plaza on New Year's Eve, and now I'm serving chili at Clancy's New Year's party with Charlie McCutcheon, this old guy next to him, and it's fallen. But so I went. Maurice was talking to another woman who's a writer in my group, and they were talking about writing, and I'm standing there listening. I'm like my first year of sobriety, I was like the donkey in Shrek, just kind of bouncing around behind everybody, kind of amazed at everything. And so I said to Maurice, he looked over at me, and I said, I've always wanted to be a writer. And he said, then write something. And he walked away. I thought, this guy does not understand who he's dealing with. And but he could never have been more right. But I filed that away. And then I started complaining about my job. And my sponsor said, well, it's time for you to move on. Go back to grad school. I said, I don't want to go to grad school. And he goes, well, then you don't have a right to complain about anything either. Well, not even a little bit. No, I'll tell you, I had a spiritual moment before this. I should probably talk about this. When I was 8 months sober, I'd been doing everything everybody asked me to do. And if you're new and you're in your first year, you feel like you're doing everything. You're like going, I'm coming to the conference. I'm doing my commitments. I'm staying over an extra night to hear Clancy tomorrow night and having a great time. I'm enjoying this, but I'm not. Where's the spiritual? I keep hearing about the spiritual awakening, and it's not happening. I feel like I'm just busy. And I told my sponsor, I'm 8 months sober. And AA is not working. And he looked at me. He said, what are you talking about? I said, when am I going to have a spiritual awakening? And he said, do I look psychic? I don't know when you're going to have a spiritual awakening. It'll happen. It's not my call. You figure it out. You'll know when you have it. There's no mistaking it when you have it. There's no ambiguity. Like, was that a spiritual awakening or was I just fantasizing again? But it's a real spiritual awakening. And I said, I don't know what that is. They said, well, don't worry. Just keep doing what you're doing and something will happen. I thought, that's crazy. That's stupid. I want to do the steps. Let's just start the steps first. Why don't we? Because you've never talked to me about the steps before. And he goes, which steps? And I said, how about 1, 2, and 3 to start with? And Bill goes, are you going to meetings like I told you to do? Yeah. He said, well, you must be because I see you there every night. Do you want to go to the meetings? No. Why do you go? Well, I feel better when I leave. I feel better by having been there. Okay. You're calling me every day. I know that. You're going to meetings early and engaging in the fellowship. You go out for coffee once you got rid of the girlfriend. You're at the book study, so I know you're getting exposed to the literature in the book. And I know that you're praying because he made me put the phone down while I prayed. He'd say, oh, have you prayed? Have you talked to your higher power this morning? Well, no, not yet, but I will. Okay, well, do it. Okay, I will. Get off the phone. No, put the phone down. Put the phone on the bed. All right, now get on your knees and talk to God. Talk to your higher power. This is really creepy, weird. And I did that, and I'd pick it up. Okay, I did. I talked to God. I said, please help me. Be obvious what you're doing, and whatever your will is, please be really obvious because I don't understand subtlety. And amen. That's good. That's good. I'll see you tonight. I said, well, when are we gonna? He said, do you do all those things? You're still doing all those things? I said, yes. For 8 months, I've been doing those things, and I want to know when we're gonna start doing the steps. He said, which steps do you think you're not doing? You're doing the steps. You just don't even know it because you're in it. The steps aren't a theory. They're not here to learn how to quote to other people. They're not podium script. The steps are something that you incorporate into your life. I'm just having you keep busy in AA so that you will eventually get out of your own freaking way and allow yourself to have a spiritual awakening. You just haven't had it yet because you're just not out of your own way yet. It's okay. It's all right. Just take your time, but keep doing the steps, as keep doing the actions as I tell you, because eventually it'll become clear to you and it'll be beyond my ability to make you understand it. And I thought, sure, I can get out of there. Now I'm really upset. And I go to an afternoon meeting to get away from my home group. I go to this afternoon meeting, and this one gets up and goes, I've been sober for 7 months. We haven't been to a meeting in 6.5 months. I'm going, oh boy. And she goes, but I came back today and I had a spiritual awakening. Wow. I've been folding the cords, mopping the floor, dumping the basket of used stuff, literature mule, call the sponsor, pray to my bedspread. Nothing. This bitch comes back for 1 day. 1 day. And she's already God's BFF. And I couldn't. I was really really angry then, but I kept doing what I was told to do. I kept doing it, and 2 weeks later, I'm at my Sunday night meeting, and people are lined up to thank the speaker. And I'm getting ready to mop the floor, so I got the mop and the bucket, and I'm standing there to wait till they kind of move out of the way. And I'm looking at this line of about 150 people standing there to thank the speaker. And I looked across at the faces of everybody standing in that line, and it occurred to me in here, I knew every single one of those people by name, and I liked them. Where does that come from somebody who doesn't like humans? You know, I liked him. I thought if I could be any other place in the whole world besides standing here with this mop, I wouldn't go. I just want to stand here and feel like this forever because I feel like I'm part of something. I feel like I'm alive. This is what this is what I drank for. And I'm here. And I'm among these people that get me. They get it. And I just stood there for like a minute, stunned. And I did my commitment and I rushed home and I called Bill and I told him what happened. And he said, you just had a moment of grace. And so what? Wow. He said, you just got out of your own way long enough to let God come out and play. Because you've been locking that higher power inside of you in your spirit for your whole life. You've been shut in there and locked the door. And you take charge and you make things happen. And it doesn't work that way because it causes nothing but despair, because the more you push that power away, the more it yearns to have you be a part of it, and the more discomfort you feel by being apart from it. And I understood that. And I'm a firm believer that God, this is my opinion, but I don't believe God lives up there. So I don't pray up there. When I pray right in here, because I believe that God inhabits this territory right inside of me. And the real problem with that is that he never lets me see him in me, but I get to see him in you. And that's why I come to Alcoholics Anonymous, because I don't have God patting me on the shoulder saying, good job, lad. Um, because my God talks like Sean Connery. So let's go surrender, shall we? Uh, but I only recognize God in other people. And it's easy to see him in you because you're trying to see him in me. And when I see him in you, I can walk out of here and I can go out anywhere in the world and I can be standing on any street corner and I can try to look at any other person and say to the God inside of me, please show yourself somewhere because I really need to see you right now. Whatever you are, wherever this power is coming from, I'd love to see you right now. And something happens. And I never know what it is until after the fact. It's always after the fact. They say in here, don't leave 5 minutes before the miracle happens. Don't leave 5 minutes before you find out that the miracle already happened and you just haven't figured it out yet. What a bitch that would be, right? Like, Oh, that was the miracle, and I went out. How stupid am I? Don't compound ignorance with stupidity. We just have to wait around and hang with each other because you and I understand. I'll tell you something that it boils down to here. You and I both understand what's at stake in here. We do. We understand what the stakes are in here, and they're as Craig said, they're our lives. We just put our life on the line. We put our life on the line sometimes with each other and say, I will do anything. I would feel absolutely no compunction about calling Bob and saying, I'm in a predicament right now. I can't get a hold of my sponsor, and I will do anything you tell me to do to try to resolve this. And if he gave me a direction and said, do this, it would be incumbent upon me to try that. But all I'm doing is I'm appealing to the power inside of him to help guide the power inside of me to do what the right thing is, so that when I walk out of these meetings, I can be one amongst many out there and not have to tell everybody about it. Because we're Alcoholics Anonymous. We do great things in the world, and we don't have to bark about where we got it. We bark about what we're doing with each other. And I wound up going back to college to appease that wrathful sponsor. And I went to Loyola Marymount University, nice Catholic Jesuit university. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to enroll. I felt stupid. I was 3 years sober now, and I went up there and I didn't know what to do. And I was a gardener. And I said, where do you go to sign up for the school? And he goes, oh, that's the enrollment office. Admissions is right over there on the second floor of that building. So the gardener guided me, because I'm not afraid to ask people for direction if I need it. And so I go up there and I signed up for school. And they say, well, we'll let you know if you've been admitted when we get your transcripts and everything. Okay, fine. So I went away thinking, well, that's easy. They're not going to admit me here because it's a good school. And about a month later, I get a letter saying that I've been admitted to Loyola Marymount. And I thought, oh crap, as only an alcoholic could do. I got good news, damn it. And because that means I have to follow through on it. I don't like that. So anyway, so I went back and I said, I told Bill, I don't have any money to go to school and it's expensive. He said, try financial aid and see if they can lend you money. So I go up there and same gardener. So there, hey, where do you go if you need to get money and borrow money to go to school? Oh, it's financial aid. It's right over at the first floor of this building. Thank you. I can go over there and sign up for financial aid. I got approved. You know why I got approved? Because I sat down for a year with another member of Alcoholics Anonymous every Thursday night with a box full of bills and a box full of debt. And this man went through every single bill with me and told me what to pay and who to write letters to. And I wrote like 13 letters to people saying, I don't have the money to pay you the full amount that I owe you right now, but I'm sending you $10 right now. And I fully intend to pay the balance of whatever it was, and sent it all these letters off at George, his name is George W. from Georgia. And George said, do that. And so I did it. And nobody ever wrote back and said, no, we don't accept your terms. They just accepted the money. I eventually, within a year, paid off my debts. And so when I applied for that loan at the school for financial aid, I got it. And it was pretty remarkable. But it's an Alcoholics Anonymous member who guided me in that. And I went back to school, and I realized something then, that I don't have a memory. I don't have my memory. I can't memorize anything. I can't memorize the big book. I can't memorize passages. I used to be able to do that, but I can't anymore. I couldn't even when I was newly sober. Something burned. I burned a fuse out somewhere. But the good side is that it makes everything seem new. I'll be 100 pages into a book and go, I read this before, I don't remember it. But I learned about sonnets and poetry and had teachers that would recite poetry to the class. I remember one teacher who was he was in class, he was standing by the window, and I'm sitting there watching him, and he's reciting a poem, looking out the window of the classroom, and he turned around and he had tears streaming down the cheeks of his face, and I thought, that's the kind of person I want to be. Not a crybaby, but somebody who's moved again by things and not just a cynical prick. And so I went through and I did my graduate studies, and I, in the meantime, got a job teaching. I taught at the college I was unloading books at. I got a teaching job there, and I taught English to students how to. It was like English 101. It's called dumbbell English, which is not really fair. And so I started teaching these students there. And then apparently the pain was not enough teaching college students. I got a high school teaching job in the following year and began to teach teenagers. And I remember sitting in I was at home. My sponsor came over the day before I was going to go in and teach high school. And he comes walking in, and his first words were, make some coffee. That means we're going to talk. And so I'd make some coffee, and we sit down in my living room. And he lived in the next block over. And he said, so you're going to go in and teach tomorrow? I said, yeah. And he goes, first day at St. Bernard's High School? Yeah, first day. He goes, boy, I wouldn't want to do that. Said, well, why? And he said, because those kids are tough. High school teenagers. Oh, God, I wouldn't want to do that. I said, yeah, I know. He said, that could probably eat you alive. And you walk in there. I said, yeah, that's what I've heard. And he said, you may go in there and find out that you never should have even entertained the thought of being a high school teacher. That could happen. He said, either that or you can not go in there and wonder if you could have been a high school teacher for the rest of your life. How you want to live your life? Do you want to do it, or do you want to wonder what would have happened if you had done it? How do you want to live that life? And I went in there, and it wasn't easy, but I'll tell you something. I had the hand of Alcoholics Anonymous at the small of my back every time I faced those kids. And I went to my teacher friends, my two nuns, Sister Sheila and Sister Mary were both educators. And I said, what do you do with these kids? And Sister Mary said, oh, it's very easy, Charlie. You do it like this. You let them know that you've got something that they need. And that if they really want it a lot, you'll go with them a lot. If they wanted this much, you will go that far to give it to them. And if they only want it this much, then that's how far you're going to go to give it to them, is that much. Treat them like little newcomers. I thought, brilliant. So I went in and I told them. I didn't use the brogue, but I said, I'm your teacher. I'm not your friend. If you want to learn what I've got to teach that much, then I'm going to work that hard to teach it to you. And if you only want it this much, then I'm only going to give it to you that much. You make the call. I turned around and start writing on the board. I remember one time there was a moment in there where we were taught, we had a rule at the school that students were not to be in the hallways during lunch break. And I heard laughter in the hallway one day. And I went to the window of my classroom and looked out and opened the door. And there was a young man entertaining these four girls. They were sitting on the floor and he was talking to them, and it was lunchtime. And I said, excuse me, but this is lunchtime and you're not supposed to be in the hallway. So would you mind going downstairs? And he looked at me and he said, yeah, we will. And he goes back to talking to these girls. And I said, your little tough guy act might work with your little friends downstairs, but it doesn't work with a real person. So you might want to pack up your little bindle and take your friends and go downstairs like I asked you to, right? And he's backed up, and the girls got up, and they all walked downstairs, and I thought, yes, son of a bitch, don't ever cross. I no sooner walked back into my classroom, I felt terrible. Because as I learned in sobriety, you can't talk that way to somebody who has no recourse against you. He couldn't have said anything back to me. I'm a teacher. He didn't have any defense. He couldn't say anything. And I treated him rudely and in front of his peers, which is not right. And it all went through my head. It was all AA talking to me. You owe this kid amends. So I go to the window and I'm looking for him because he was not my student. Neither were the girls. I'm looking down in the area. It's like looking at baby chicks. They're all running around together. I can't tell which one's the one that was up there. And it's, oh, crap. Another lesson learned. I'll never do that again. And I'm sitting in my office, in my classroom. And the next day I hear this on the door and it's lunchtime. I look over and there's that kid in the window, looking in the window. I thought, oh no, hit the deck. So I motioned for him to come in and he walked in and he walked right up to my desk and stood in front of me. He said, Mr. Carney, my name is Anthony. And I want to apologize for the attitude that I put out to you yesterday. I'm a senior and I'm going to be graduating in 3 months, and I don't want to leave here with any bad blood between me and a teacher. And I'm really sorry for what I said. He stuck his hand out, and I couldn't shake because I was only that big. And I shook his hand, and Anthony, he was not one of my students. I'll tell you something. For the next 2 years, when he came back to visit the school, the seniors always come back for a couple of years to visit, and then they gradually cut ties with the school and they become adults. He came back to that school for 2 years, and he always came in my classroom and said hi, and he told me how he was doing in college. And that's something. He was more mature about this than I was. He was more of an AA example than I was, and he wasn't even sober. You know. And we learn our lessons from everybody. And I went on from that job to become a writer. I got an opportunity to write. I didn't want to take it. I was terrified. But my sponsor said, you know how to teach now. You've been teaching for 7 years. Why don't you try it? And I went to my students and I asked them, what would you do? And they said, take the job. It's like, get out of here. And And so I went and took this job, and I wound up writing for the studio for years, and became a professional writer. And I was terrified the whole time, but I had people that showed me how to do it. And I learned in AA that as long as I'm willing to ask, how do I do this? Can you help me with this? And be open enough, and not just be the kind of guy I usually am, where I'll figure this out myself. I don't have to ask anybody. I don't want to look stupid. I don't want to show them I'm afraid. I go and say, I don't know what this means. And they say, oh, that's easy. And they would explain it to me. I thought, great. So I go back and do it. And I became valuable to this company, and they hired me full time. And I worked for them for 16 years, and then wound up, they had a restructuring, and I lost my job. But I got, with that company, I got to go all over the world, and I got to experience Alcoholics Anonymous in different places like Scotland and Hong Kong. I went to Hong Kong one time, and I needed a meeting, and I knew from here, every time I went to a new city, I would call the central office and say, where are your meetings? Just so I'd have it in my pocket. And I called the central office in Hong Kong, and it's a message machine. So I leave a message telling who I am, where I'm staying, and can you get me to a meeting? And so I get back from work from that day, and I go in my hotel room, and the light's blinking, and I push the button, and I hear this voice go, Charlie, this is Blackie. I have the information you're looking for. This is great. A guy in Hong Kong named Blackie. Whoa. And I wound up going to a meeting, up in the hills, way above Hong Kong. We didn't even know where it was. I told the cab driver, just keep driving. I'll tell you if I see anybody. And he's looking at me like I'm crazy. And we're driving and driving. All of a sudden, I look, and there are all these people with styrofoam cups standing in front of the building. I said, that's them right there. And he said, you sure? I said, of course I'm sure. Because I needed a meeting. And I went to a meeting in Scotland, and I couldn't even find the meeting until I noticed I was looking for this meeting and this address on this cobblestone street for about an hour. I couldn't find it anywhere. I had the address before it and the address after it, and I couldn't find the other address because there was no door there. And I'm looking, and I finally see this little tarnished brass plaque about as big as a postage stamp on the side, on the jamb of the door, and it said AA number 1. And it was the first AA meeting in Scotland. And it was in Edinburgh. And so I stood there, and I'm looking at it, says AA number 1. I thought, there was no door handle or anything. So and I hear this feet coming down the stairs. A woman opens the door. She got a big kettle of tea. Come on in, we're having a meeting. Nobody. I couldn't understand a word she was saying when we go up to the meeting. I didn't understand a word anybody said at the meeting, but I felt like I was a part of it because they all knew why I was there, and I knew why they were there. And had a great meeting. Alcoholics Anonymous has saved my life on a daily basis for 35 years. Alcoholics Anonymous and nothing else. I've been to therapy for things. I had a terrible divorce. How are we doing on time? And thank you. Amen. Alcoholics Anonymous has been the guiding light in my life. As long as I keep coming back here and trying to be part of the 5%. We have to stay active in here to gain the joy that's in here. If we don't If we're not active with each other, how do we get to know each other? And how do we get to remember what's at stake? And how do we get to help somebody new if we don't? If I can't grab one of you and say, hey, there's a new guy back here, let's go talk to him. Because it always is easier with two of us than it is with just one of us. And we go back and tag team them, and try to get it, show them that it's worthwhile to stay here. We do our 12-step calls and we drink our coffee and we enjoy each other's company. And some people never get a chance at this. Some people worse than that get a chance at this and they throw it away. They throw it away. I'll tell you a story and I'll sit down. It's going to be a little long in a minute, but you can cut me off anytime. My father, the Marine, he was a Marine Corps drill instructor and he was a carpenter later. And my father for years used to make lunch for me. He would make, but we didn't have a lot of money. And so my dad would always make lunch for me from the time I was in about the 7th grade till I was about the 10th grade. And he would get up in the morning early and he would make a sandwich and an apple and put an apple in this bag and all the stuff he'd put together, a couple of cookies here. And he'd write my name on the bag and set it by the door. And then he would go off to work. And I would get up, I'd grab that bag, I'd go to school, I'd cross the school line, and I'd drop the bag in the trash can and just keep walking. Because cool kids don't bring their lunch to school in a brown bag. The cool kids buy their lunch. And I don't need one more piece of evidence that I'm not a cool kid. I already know I'm not. I mean, I know I'm gawky and ugly, and I'm not appealing to girls, and I'm not popular, and I don't know what to do, but I'm not going to carry this goddamn lunch around and have one more insult. I'd chuck in the trash. And when I got home, I'd see my dad coming up, whistling, whistle up the walkway, coming out from work, and I just shut him off. It's like, I can't deal with this. Not getting what I need. And I know he's disappointed in me because I'm the only child. My mom had 4 babies and I was the only one that lived. The others were carried to term and died at birth. And I'm the one that lived. Why me? I don't even deserve to be here. I don't want to be here. And he gets me and I know he's disappointed. I'm not Marine material and I'm not cool. And I just am, I feel awful. And now he's making a stupid lunch for me. And the best I can do is just drop it in the trash and keep moving, And, so that came up in my inventory because I felt distant from my father, and I'd made amends to my father at that point, and I made amends to my mom and paying her back the mother loans. And I went to her after I'd made amends to my father, and I said, Dad used to make lunch for me every morning, and I used to throw it in the trash at school. And she said, I know. And I said, well, how do you know? She said, well, your dad told me. I said, how did he know? She said, well, he'd ask a question every few months about, was that apple okay? It looks like it had bruise on it. I said, it was fine, and it was an orange. Or he'd say, was that bologna sandwich okay? I put too much mustard on it? No, it was perfect. And it was peanut butter. But he never asked it very often, never asked on any regular basis. And the lunch was always there in the morning with my name written on the bags. And I said, if he knew that I was throwing it away every day, why did he keep making it for me? And my mom looked at me across that table, and I got it, man. It was like, are you the dumbest human being I've ever seen? Because he loved me. He loved me. And his joy, the only way he could show his love was to make that lunch. That was his embrace. That was his gift. And he made that lunch and he put it by the door. And what I did with it was my business. But he got the joy making that lunch. He got the joy getting up in the morning and making his son, the son that lived, making his lunch for him and sending him on his way. And whatever you do with that lunch, son, is your choice. I threw it in the trash. Now, what does that have to do with today? Well, people set up this place. They set up the tables. They set up. Rusty came from a long distance and put up this wonderful display of literature and tapes and CDs. People have coffee out here. Everything is ready for us. The lunch is made and served here. And if you don't want it, whose spirit is going to suffer from hunger of what we have here? You may not want it, but we're not going to stop making it. We'll be doing this every night, every day, every year. It'll be doing the same thing. If you don't want it, we're not going to stop. But I'll tell you one thing. If you want it again, come back. Enjoy it. It's an act of love. This is the act of love Alcoholics Anonymous is. It's that dry-eyed humility that people have toward each other here. And the sense of we serve a greater purpose by just doing whatever we're doing with joy and not worrying about the outcome. So let's go have lunch. Thanks.